Sometimes we end up taking a path in our life or, profession that is for reasons that are attached to our trauma. It becomes clear that we're often acting out of fear or trauma or negative limiting beliefs when we start to just kill our own dreams. I sit with myself and that higher self of like, what's the divine vision? What's the identity in different areas of my life?
Hello and welcome to Make It Happen with Will Polston. I'm Will Polston. This is episode number 164, and in this episode I'm joined by Martha McSally. Colonel Martha McSally is America's first woman to command a fighter squadron and a combat-proven leader, pioneer, world-renowned inspirational speaker and celebrated author. After a 26-year military career, she is now bringing her lessons from combat to inspire and equip you and your team to soar through fear and adversity so you can thrive and elevate to peak performance. Martha has lived a life of overcoming trauma, barriers and fear to achieve history-making extraordinary feats. She's now on a mission to teach you how to do the same by boldly declaring and living, I am. You can't elevate in life or business if you avoid what's held you back in the past. Instead of defining yourself by what you've experienced, what others want, how you feel, or what you're afraid of, Martha's process is built around connecting you with who you truly are to grow and succeed in every area of life. Despite losing her dad at the age of 12 and surviving sexual abuse and assault, she persevered to become the first woman in US history to fly an AF fighter jet in combat and command a fighter squadron in combat. Along her journey, she conquered significant internal and external obstacles, including US law prohibiting women from flying combat jets. She persevered, held on to her dreams, refused to give up, and shattered glass ceilings because she learned to stand by who she is instead of defining herself by what she's been through, others' opinions, or seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Through humour, transparency, emotional connection, and powerful storytelling, Martha brings you into the cockpit and behind the scenes of high-stakes leadership moments in American history while capturing hearts along the way, all while imparting actionable takeaways that can immediately empower you and your team. In this episode, we're talking about Dare to Fly, Simple Lessons in Never Giving Up with Martha McSally. So Martha, welcome to the show.
Great to be on, Will. So excited for our conversation.
You and I both. So I know that you have just come back from a little mini adventure, haven't you?
Well, I do a lot of adventures, but this particular one was an epic rim to rim to rim of the Grand Canyon, plus some side excursions, backpacking adventure that I co-led with a fellow, member of Genius Network. And it was about 59 miles of hiking. The Grand Canyon is one of the 7 wonders of the world. It's extraordinary. The pictures just don't do it justice. So we went from, if this is the south rim of the canyon, this is the Colorado River, this is the north rim of the canyon. It was a pretty massive down. Of course, cold plunged in the river. Did some side excursions. We slept the first night on this plateau over the river in the wilderness area. It was just freaking amazing. And then a long trek up to the North Rim and then back down again, some other side excursions, and then back up to the South Rim. It was just extraordinary. I mean, just breathtaking, sleeping in the Grand Canyon. With the moon was up, the stars were out, and the rushing of the water and the sound of the wilderness. It's hard to describe unless you're actually in the middle of it, what that's like. I've hiked the Grand Canyon many times, and I've hiked rim to rim all in one day, which is a 24-mile, pretty difficult trek, but I'm always kind of like just blowing through. And this time I was able to sleep 2 nights in the Grand Canyon. Things didn't go as planned, as always. We had some contingencies with my co-leader, actually, who's extremely experienced. He's got about 2,000 miles of backpacking below the rim of the Grand Canyon, but he had an unforeseen medical issue pop up. So we had to all kind of work together to get him out safely. And we did. He's going to be okay. But just like anything in life, nothing goes as planned. And we had to kind of rally to the occasion. And that was all part of the adventure and what's made it even more epic.
Absolutely. And look, adventure, I think, is definitely a word to describe your life, because I've had the pleasure of knowing you for some months now, and you are absolutely somebody that eats, sleeps, and breathes this stuff. So, as we've just heard in the introduction, you really have had quite the career. But one of the things that I'm always interested in doing is going back to where it began for people, because I'm a big believer
Mm,
in what the thing that I've been obsessed with my
yeah.
whole life is what's going on in between the years. What is the
Yes.
thing that drives people?
Yeah.
And like literally the first woman to command a fighter squadron, like that in itself is just incredible. But what's fascinating for me was when I first started really digging in and go, well, what drives this lady?
Yeah.
Was you never wanted to be a fighter pilot,
No.
which is
No.
quite interesting.
Yeah. There usually, sometimes you hear stories of kids who go to an air show when they're a kid and they see the planes and they're like, oh, that's it. And then I was talking to someone the other day, then that becomes their dream and they eventually achieve it after, decades of hard work. Or someone maybe who has a family member who is a pilot, they're somehow they get the dream, they get the bug, something has them looking up, they've got little spoons as a baby of like airplanes. I was motion sick as a kid. And I mean, my first ride on an airplane with my family was just like, I was miserable. I was like literally had my head in a bag as a little kid. I had no desire to be a pilot, to be a fighter pilot. But life takes its different courses. And for me, I grew up in a very stable middle class family, youngest of five kids, three older brothers, one older sister. And my dad, classic, growing up, born in the 30s, just, classic hard work, tough circumstances, started working at the age of 8. His dad died before he was born. His mom died when he was a teenager, looking for opportunities, working at a gas station when he graduated high school. And somebody just believed in him and said he needs to, he needs a chance to do something. So they helped him get a work study scholarship to go to college. And then he served in the Navy, used his GI Bill to continue his education. And my dad just, he had these values of hard work, of pay it forward, right? Of, do something that matters with your life and make a difference for the next generation. And he was driven to make a better life for us kids. And I didn't understand all this at the time, like most of us, what he had to do in order to ensure that we had this stable kind of middle class life. But my dad very suddenly passed away when I was 12. I mean, literally there one day as a family, hanging out together in the summer. Then he wasn't feeling well, went to the hospital, and then the next day he was gone. Like he had a heart attack, and then he had another one. And like I'm 12 years old, and my world was just like completely rocked in an instant at a very volatile time anyway. I mean, those are for anybody who has kids that are 12. It's just a tough time anyway. And then my mom, God bless her, single mom, five kids. She went back to school, back to work, just kind of like we have this generational dynamic, Will, of these can be your strengths and your weaknesses of like turn your kind of challenges and grief and difficult emotions into action, right? Like just turn like, okay, well, I need to do something. And that can be a blessing, but it also, can not serve you. It serves you until it doesn't serve you, like any tool, right? So, God bless my mom, think about as a widow, I have far more compassion on her now, looking back, trying to, just getting hit with this 2x4, trying to deal with all this. But I just felt like I was lost, all of a sudden at 12, I was just like, got this screaming going on in my soul. And my mom's kind of gone. I say that out of love. She's about to turn 90. But, my dad's gone. I'm angry at God. I'm angry at the world, just like, but I'm also, before my dad died, he told me to make him proud before he died. So now I'm
Mm.
driven to make my dead father proud, which is like chasing the horizon, right? You're never going to get there. But that actually helped me not come completely unraveled emotionally because even when I was acting out and getting in trouble, I always put some guardrails on it because like, oh, I need to not, disappoint my dad. So, I mean, off I go on my journey, just a lot of volatility, but also very driven to make my father proud. And, my high school years are pretty exhausting, but I was looking for, ways to do something meaningful. I wouldn't have said this at the time, right? Like, every day is a gift. I wouldn't have said that at the time, but I definitely learned that at an early age and wanted to kind of carry on his legacy. But I was also just a ball of grief and unresolved trauma from that. And I just kind of poured myself into sports and school, just like trying to keep the keep it together. That makes sense. So then I've shared with you, this. I shared this when I spoke at Genius Network. I had a track coach who then violated the trust I had of him. And I mean, this is, again, I'm a fatherless, innocent, naive, teenager looking for a father figure of a man who's in authority, twice my age, more than twice my age. And he, like typical predators do, was grooming me, and I now know other girls, and then, violated that trust. And so now I'm dealing with that trauma, and I'm just like, I'm trying to survive, Will. Like there was something inside me is just like, this isn't going to stop me. I didn't use these words, but it was just like, it was my spirit saying like, this isn't going to stop you. This isn't going to define you. You got to get out of here. And so as I was looking for opportunities, you think about these decisions in your life where you go this way or this way, like looking for where I'm going to go to school, very inconsequential as a teenager. I just think about, I mean, it was consequential, but it felt at the moment like, I don't know, I think I'll go that way. I mean, I applied to the Air Force Academy, but I didn't even know what I was doing. Like, I didn't even know what that meant. I just thought, get a free education, pay back in service instead of, student loans, don't saddle my mom with debt. And I thought there was something inside me. It was like the challenge would be good to kind of put some guardrails on me to keep me focused and keep me from, destroying myself. And while I'm trying to grow up and sort this stuff out. And so I just decided like, okay, I guess I'll go to the Air Force Academy. I thought I was going to be a doctor. I was just clueless. You're 17. And so, off I go, get on the airplane. And I also wanted to get away from this predator. Honestly, it was like geographically, I wanted to get safe from him. And
Mm.
I got there and found out that it was against the law for women to be fighter pilots. And it was the first time I was told that I couldn't do something because I was a girl. And so I took this rebellious spirit that I had, which could have really hurt me. I actually was like, can I swear on your podcast?
You can do whatever you like.
Okay, I was actually like, well, fuck that. Like, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I was like, what if I can't be a fighter pilot just because I'm a girl? And I was like, well, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I just
Mm.
decided not because I inherently wanted to fly, not because I was exposed to aviation, but because they told me that I couldn't, I was just like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. Girls can do this too. And I just put into my heart, like, that's what I was going to be, even though it was against the law. And it took a very long time, for that dream to come true. But I willed it into existence by just
You did.
declaring that's what I was going to be.
I want to touch on one thing though, because you joined the sort of the Air Force, and you said you wanted to be a doctor. But am I right in
Yeah.
saying that you wanted to be a doctor because you wanted to help people
Yes.
like your
Yes.
dad not
Yes.
die?
Oftentimes, this is my experience. And as I coach people, I think many people have similar experiences that we decide to take direction in our lives for reasons that are related to something negative that we've been through. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Where you feel passion to help others not suffer in the way you suffered. So at first it was attached to like, I want to be a doctor so I can save other kids from having to go through what I went through. And but then I had to decide, like I had this dream going on in my heart, right? Like, whereas like, I want to be a fighter pilot, but then this doctor thing was attached to my dad and my grief. So I had to work that out as a, 18, 19-year-old and come to a realization that that was attached to my grief and it's okay to let it go. And I'm not letting my dad down and I'm not like letting other people down. I have to follow my path for my life, for my calling, and it's this way. But that was not an easy decision. I had to really discern what's really going on inside me and why,
Mhm.
and how do I let that go. That was not an easy decision with the tools I had at the time, which were not the same tools I have now, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, right? And so I had to let that go. But I think it's, many of your listeners may relate to this. Sometimes we end up taking a path in our life or, profession that is for reasons that are attached to our trauma, or attached to what somebody else wants us to do. And, coming to a realization of like, that's not my path, whatever that is, whether you're 19 or whether you're 55, if you come to that realization, like, this is not the path that was for me, like my path, then take a turn, like get to the next, you're at an
Mm,
intersection every single day. What is your purpose? What is your calling? Take that path. For me, I just sensed like I needed to go be a fighter pilot. Like it just pissed me off. And I was like, no, girls can do this. Don't say we can't. And I feel like as I reflect back, I took this kind of change agent, entrepreneurial, rebellious spirit in me that could have gone in a bad direction, right? I could have used that for self-destructive ways, like many driven people do who have not resolved their trauma. But I took it and it pushed me in a positive direction, where I was determined to prove that women could fly fighter jets. And I didn't say I hope I'll be a fighter pilot or I might be a fighter pilot. I said I am a fighter pilot.
mm,
I am. And I just put myself into that cockpit. I just visualized it with the tools I had at the time. I never doubted. Well, I shouldn't say never doubted. That's not true. I did doubt. I doubted at times that it wasn't going to happen, but I kept making decisions along the way in order to ensure that it would happen. And it took 10 years. And I had little to do with the change in the law or the policy, but I had a lot to do with what was going on inside me. And me just being determined that I am a fighter pilot. And every decision I made was with those lenses on of like, what's the next decision to keep this door open, to make sure I'm equipped and ready. No, don't have a bad attitude. Don't have a chip on your shoulder. Just keep growing. Again, I didn't use these terms at the time, but it was what was inside me. Keep growing, keep learning, keep the options open. Don't close any doors. You never know when it's going to change. And I was in the right place at the right time with the right skills and the right grit and the right qualifications when the door finally opened. There were other women in my same circumstance, I think, who didn't have the same thing going on inside them.
mm.
And they were hoping that it would change for them, but I like willed it into existence for myself.
Yeah. Well, you say they were hoping it. So I'm a big believer that hope is not a strategy.
Yes.
And hope doesn't get you results. It is that having that knowing the belief. We're going to come on to I am in a moment because I
Yes.
believe I am are the two most powerful words in the English language. They
Yes.
determine your identity, and your
Yes.
identity is your strongest form of belief. And we're going to go into that. However, there's something else that I didn't know about you, which I actually have, for anyone that's watching this on YouTube, which if you're not, by the way, go and watch this on YouTube. It's a fantastic interview to watch on YouTube. But I have this, which is a picture frame that says there is no such
Yes.
thing as a lack of resources, only a lack of resourcefulness. Now, I think this
Awesome.
is slightly comical, so I want to share this with everybody because I didn't know this about
Yeah.
you. Is that the minimum height to be a fighter pilot is 5'4", and you wasn't
Yes.
5'4", were you, Martha?
No, I was not. So, yeah, I decided I'm going to be a fighter pilot. And basically, they said, well, you're not even qualified to be any pilot because you're too short. And I was like, okay, well, how do we fix that? What do we, how are we gonna how are we gonna get around that? And there are physical limitations for a reason. The cockpits are built for also if you're too tall, it's not going to work for you, just to be clear. Like if you can't close the canopy and keep your spine straight, or if your femur is too long and you eject, you're going to lose your legs. Like they're not going to let you fly if you're too tall. If you're too short, you have to be able to see over the dashboard, for to use layman's terms. You have to be able to go full rudder and full brake with your legs to get yourself out of a spin. Like there's very legitimate reasons why they have these restrictions, but within an inch on each end, they previously had some judgment, right? If you were within an inch, there was sitting height and total height, but then they would do kind of a functional check to see if you were good to go. So I was just a little bit too short. I think at my tallest, being measured in the morning after I hung upside down, I was like 5'3.5", but I didn't quite, get there. And my sitting height was okay. So it really came down to my leg length. So I went through this very long, like I would not give up. Like the bureaucracy, talking about the military, it's the government, like the bureaucracy at first, did the functional check on me. The instructors and the medical guys all signed off like she's functionally good to go. But the bureaucracy, some bureaucrat kept stamping my package, denied, denied. And like I just refused to take no for an answer. I literally refused to. And some of these things were within my control. Some of these things were not in my control. But again, I was just not taking no for an answer. And I just think now, like, the universe blessed that, if that makes sense. Like, God blessed that I was like, I'm going to have this happen. So one day I'm a cadet at the academy, they actually put me through like a leg strength test. The doctor was like, look, let's prove that because she's a triathlete, a runner, like her leg strength is, in the whatever 90th percentile of pilot qualified cadets, male and female. And so her leg strength overcomes her slight, leg length issue. And that came back denied. Like, there's just everything we tried, no bureaucrat cared. They didn't care about my dream. They didn't care about me serving in the capacity that I could best serve. They just cared about being a bureaucrat, right? And so they call me in. Now I've pulled out of med school. I have no other option. Like, I have no plan B. I'm like, I'm going to be a pilot. We're getting ready. It's my senior year. And like, there's not a lot of other options. I've worked my ass off, as a cadet. I'm graduating as distinguished graduate. All the competitive career fields are being taken. And they call me in and they basically like, Martha, the dream is dead. Like, the doctor, the head flight surgeon calls me and he's like, I'm sorry, we've tried everything. Like, the third package came back, no, you got to come up with a plan B, and I'm like, I don't have a plan B, like, I'm going to be a pilot. And he tells me literally the terms, the dream is dead, and sends me out of his office. And I remember walking back to my dorm room in this like dark state. Like, it was a dark, what am I going to do now? It's like, he just said it's over. He was my path to this opportunity, and he just said it's over. And I just was like, I was so forlorn, and I was just so like, oh man. And at that moment, the superintendent of the Air Force Academy comes into his office to like get a flu shot or something. I don't even remember why he came in. It doesn't matter. And he looks at the colonel and he's like, why the long face? And he's like, I just had to tell this, kick-ass cadet who's one of our top cadets who deserves to be a pilot, who's qualified to be a pilot, that she's not going to be a pilot. And the superintendent says, who is it? He said, Martha McSally. He goes, I know Martha McSally. Martha McSally needs to be a pilot. Like, I really was performing well at the academy. And he's like, what's the issue? So he tells him, and he says, you know what? Give me her package. I'm on my way to Air Training Command tomorrow. I'm going to go talk to the commander. We're going to get an exception for her. I can get exceptions to policy. And so he grabs his package. And by the time I get back to my dorm, there's a phone call on the landline. Cadet McSally, go, you get a phone call. The doctor's on the other line. He's like, the dream's alive. The dream's alive. The dream's not dead. And so I ended up getting an exception to policy because the general came into the clinic that day. Otherwise, I don't know. I really don't know where my life would have gone.
I don't think it is that the general came in that day. All right, yeah, that's the final thing, but it's the fact that you didn't give up. I know you
Yeah,
joked about it. For people that just missed this, you would hang upside down. You worked out that a spine would be more compressed in the morning, so
yes.
you'd measure yourself later in the day. Like you really, I believe I'm right saying at some point you even got your friend to donk you on the head to
I
like give you a
did.
little bump on the
I was
head to
like,
make you a
maybe
little
I
bit
need a little
taller.
bump. Like,
The
don't
little
knock
bump.
me out, but give me just a little bump. Yeah, I
So
was like, I was
there's that stuff.
19.
But the biggest thing though, and this is what I really wanted to talk to, was that there 4 words. I am actually technically it's 5. I am a fighter
Right.
pilot.
Fighter pilot.
And adopting that belief,
Yes. Yes.
how fundamental do you think that was to your success, not only in becoming a fighter pilot, but then going and doing all of the things that you did as a fighter pilot?
Absolutely fundamental. I didn't completely understand it at the time. I now understand it at a deeper level and I teach it and coach it. But I was declaring my identity. I was willing it into existence. And this, I think there's mindset elements to this, there's energetic elements to this, there's spiritual elements to this. That when you declare what you are, not I will be a fighter pilot, but I am. There's a powerful, as you said, it's what you say after those words really, really matters. And we all need to take great care with our words and our energy related to statements like that. And saying, I am a fighter pilot allowed me to picture myself, to visualize myself, just declaring this was my destiny and this was my identity. And I had no idea how this impossible dream was going to come true, but I knew it was going to be. And that allowed me to keep the inner strength when it looked like there was no option. when it looked like the doors were closing. I mean, it was against the law, Will. I didn't have anything to do with the law changing. I just did what I could in my trench, that I had to fight, which was what's going on inside me and what decisions I made to be excellent at everything I did, to be open for opportunities that were going to keep having me grow and excel and be ready when the door opens, to not close doors. Like I chose when I graduated from pilot training, they had changed the law, but they wouldn't change the policy. So I graduated very high in the class. You have men going to fighter aircraft who graduated below me. I wasn't angry about that. I just thought it was going to change soon. So I chose a position to be an instructor pilot at this little base down in Texas on the Mexico border. Nobody chooses these jobs if they were graduating that high in the class. It's not very glamorous. You're teaching pedestrians how to fly. They're trying to kill you. They're throwing up on you. It's not a glamorous job. It's an important job, but I chose it because it kept the door open, and I knew that it was going to keep building my skills. And if I had chosen like a cargo or a tanker position, they would never let me fly fighters. So I had to make decisions that were practical, that were keeping the I am vision, with that clarity, that also sucked at time. There were times I was like, God, this is like, in the moment, this sucks. Right? So I'm not saying I was always every day jumping out of bed like I'm a fighter pilot. There were so many times like it's where you feel discouraged, where you feel like it's not gonna happen, you feel like this is not worth it, but you just keep going, keep going, don't give up, don't get down where you just decide to destroy your dream or you completely throw it away. Keep moving forward. And I was able to do that by the grace of God, just kind of growing that muscle of mine of
Mm.
just being so clear about what my destiny was, and trusting it was going to happen, but also doing my part. You're not just going to sit there in your Zen position and have the law of attraction bring that thing into your life. You have to take inspired action to intersect your I am destiny in order for those things to happen. Now, I did a lot of matter on matter, in the past too, a lot of kind of brute force dense stuff in order to make things happen. I'm a little more aware that there were maybe some more some easier is not the right word, but ways in order to ensure that those things were going to be attracted to me. But with the skills that I had at the time, I made sure that the I am statements became exactly who it was my identity
Mm.
for that role. It's not my divine essence of my identity, but it was my identity for that role, and I did my part to ensure that's what happened.
Yeah, I can absolutely see how that drove you and enabled you to do what you do. You said inspired action. I get it. I suppose the question that a lot of people will have is, well, it's all well and good taking on the identity, but what about those moments? So you said about the times like from time to time you did still doubt yourself. You go, well, do you know what? Maybe this is a dead end. Maybe this isn't somewhere I
Yes.
can go. What was it practically? So if
Yeah.
someone right now they've embodied
Yeah.
the identity, they're doing it, they go, yeah, I know this, Martha, but I'm just still not sure. What is it that you did as like a tactic or
Yeah.
something that would keep you going when you had that roadblock, other than just having the identity that one day it will happen?
Well, I didn't understand the tools I was using at the time. I now understand them better. I think there are kind of divine tools, and I now understand them and can teach them to others. But for example, when I would start the monkey brain doing negative thoughts about like this is just never going to happen, or just, I mean, we all have it, right? Where you just start this runaway train of um I'm you silly. What? How dare you even dream these types of? I mean, I don't have to. I don't have to run the tape recorder, but we all have these negative thoughts. One of the tools that I used in my life generally to deal with my volatile emotions, to kind of help me settle down before I fully unpacked my trauma, I would go for a run. And
Mm.
I now understand that actually getting outside into novel environments that don't have fixed patterns settles you down neurologically, actually, right? So you can like get out of that monkey brain and settle that part down so that you can actually tap more into your higher self, right? Tap more into your heart, tap more into the clarity of your intuition. I didn't understand any of this at the time, where, I would feel like I would start to feel unsettled, and I would just go for a run, and it would settle me down. There's something about just like physically moving, about being in your body, getting out of your head, being in your body, like tiring yourself out a little bit, like settling your neurology down, can open up that space for you to connect back into that divine truth and get better clarity, get focus, and be like, oh, okay, now I understand. Now I feel better. Maybe I'm going to take an action or not, or I'm just going to like, what's the next thing I need to do? So, if anyone's struggling with like, the runaway train that we all have and the monkey brain that's doubting you, you got to move your body. This is my view. You like move your body, get outside, go for a walk. You don't have to run. Go for a walk, get into nature. There's something about also seeing not the fixed patterns of walking into a city, but actually getting out and the patterns that are in nature, because it actually slows your brain down neurologically, time slice wise, where you can actually open up space to then connect more into a bit of a flow state, like a creative flow state, which again, there's energetic, neurological elements to this, but there's also spiritual elements. So that allows you to kind of settle into your essence and the clarity of like, no, this is what I'm supposed to do. And okay, what's the next step I can take in order to move towards my destiny? And you can get better clarity if you move your body and just get out of your head. So that really, really served me. I found that, I would I sometimes didn't look for mentors, especially women, for whatever reason. I don't know why. Like, it seems like women, that's a whole nother podcast you could do, where women, we don't help each other out. We kind of feel like we need to go it alone, and we don't look for others who have gone the path before us. But I had these World War II female pilots. They were amazing, the Women Air Force Service pilots, who I got to meet a handful of them. They were just incredible pioneers. And they also helped me just gain perspective at times where I was feeling discouraged. This was actually after I started in fighters, but I was dealing with, just some nonsense and some hostility. And I was just like, why am I doing this? Like, is this even worth it? And they would help me to just kind of like raise my gaze and get a bigger perspective on what I'm doing. And the mundane in life doesn't feel good at times. It doesn't feel sexy. It doesn't feel big, but it's the consistency in the mundane that allows you to do really big things. And so they just help give me perspective to get back into the important consistency of the mundane things I needed to do in order to do something really big with my life. So those are just two tools that you have to get perspective. You have to somehow get out of your limited dark place, connect with that higher self, your higher sense of who you really are, connect with others in a way that helps, give you perspective and inspiration. And then don't be making decisions when you feel contractive. And I didn't have these words at the time, but generally speaking, we all know when you're sitting with yourself, if you ask yourself the question, all right, what am I about to do? Like, if you're feeling discouraged, you're just like, all right, fine, I'm just going to go do this. Do you feel expansive or contractive when you think about that decision? Do you feel, another question is like, what does the voice of love say? And what does the voice of fear say? And if you ask yourself these kind of binary, whichever feels good to you, the voice of love would say this, the voice of fear would say this, what's expansive would be this, what's contractive would be this, it becomes clear that we're often acting out of fear or trauma or negative limiting beliefs when we start to just kill our own dreams. See, I knew that was never going to happen anyway. I'm not good enough. I can't do that. Or whatever those messages are. That's not the voice of love. That's not your higher self. That's not your divine essence. That's something else. So you've got to at least just the discernment of, what am I listening to right now? And we all listen to those negative. And it's not like I've listened to them this morning, right? Just to be clear, the awareness of who's talking right now, like, or what voice is that, and what decisions am I going to make based on what I'm hearing? It's just really helpful to kind of get that awareness, so you're not making decisions that actually close doors for you.
I love that. So three main things. So get outside and exercise in nature, move your body. Number
Yeah.
two is get perspective, whether that's through mentors or taking a bigger view, looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And then third is around that decision making, not making that decision making when you're in a
Yes.
sort of a low state or poor emotional
Yes.
state. I love that. Talking of
Yes.
decision making, right? When you're flying along at, I mean, how fast were you flying when you were flying these fighter jets? It was, what was it, an
Um,
A10 that you used to fly?
yeah, the A10 is the plane I flew. It's right here. It's
Wow, look at that.
beautiful. Some people say it's ugly. I say it's beautiful. It was built around this gun, which is basically, the gun goes, it's the size of a car, the gun. Okay. It's a 30 millimeter gun, and it's got all these other, rockets, bombs, missiles, and capabilities on it. And it's single seat. This is one of the bullets. And just for
Wow.
perspective, this is a 1 liter smart water bottle. So you can kind of get the
Wow.
sense of like how big it is. So it was built kind of around this gun. The joke is they went to the engineers and said, figure out how to fly this gun. And its role is to show up when the troops are on the ground and on the front lines. It was actually built to go against Soviet tanks, but it's intended to be in the mission of what we call close air support. So we're close, we're potentially low. I mean, we're right there supporting like troops in harm's way in a firefight, often where they're on the move. There could be terrain issues, weather issues that make it even more complicated. And the risk of actually hurting the good guys is really high if you make a mistake because of just the complexity of what's going on the ground and now trying to communicate it to the air. So, yeah, it doesn't go that fast. I mean, we'd be going maybe 250, 275 miles an hour, so what is that like math in public? You guys do kilometers over there. So like, I don't know,
No, Matt,
400.
miles an hour. No, we could be miles an hour. But when
Yeah.
you said low, like how low are we talking? So I fly, as you know, I'm a
Yeah.
private pilot, not to your level, but so I've got a bit of an
Yeah.
understanding. So when you're going along at that speed and you're firing off those, how low are
Yeah.
you talking? How low are
I
you getting?
mean, we would train to fly down at 100 feet, which is crazy. Like that's a
Wow.
low, like only the
Wow.
most experienced pilots. The wingspan's 57 feet long. So you can imagine you literally blink an eye and you're dead if you are not paying attention to your vector. So that was like the extreme of staying below the radar at 100 feet. We would step down to that from 500 feet down to 250. And let's just say you're coming in a situation like that, you're trying to stay below the enemy's radar. So you're coming in low altitude and then you like pop above the terrain. So now the radar can see you, right? They're trying to find you and lock onto you. You then actually roll inverted upside down, pull down towards the target. And you've got about 3 to 5 seconds to find the target, to line up, to get on the right airspeed, altitude, dive angle, to then release your weapons and get out of there while you're being locked up by enemy radar. And you're trying to maneuver and put out decoys in order to break that lock and then get back below the terrain. So, those low altitude, high threat scenarios are extremely dangerous. You can also obviously hurt yourself by hitting the terrain, which you can appreciate as a pilot. Like with a lot of what we're doing at day, at night with night vision goggles and all sorts of amazing technology, but maneuvering at high speeds and in all different ways, it's very easy to, if you get disoriented or if you get distracted, like you flying into the ground is actually a very high risk. My friends who I lost, who were fellow pilots, in training, and it was all complex circumstances where they ended up flying into the ground day and night, just because of the complexities of what we do. So it's deadly to train in these missions, and not just in combat.
And you train and train and train and
Yeah.
train to get yourself into a position of strength. In fact, I believe I'm right in saying that um I'll come on to it, it's kind of like you've got a mantra. So I've said for years I have a blueprint, right? And my blueprint for life, I learned this sort of fairly early on, was basically study those that are better than me, take their best attributes, mix it with a bit of my own personality, and then I'll improve. Like that was my mantra and still is. In NLP we call it modeling, right?
Yeah.
Modeling other
Yeah.
people. But I believe you've got like a quite a simple mantra that enables people to achieve success in their own life that's pretty universally applied, right?
Well, I mean, I've got a lot of them. I'm not sure which one you're
The
focusing
the
on right now,
the
but
the, the one the one that I remember was basically plan and train better than the competition.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what we do in our, military is plan, 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 right? Train, 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 train. I did this in the military and I did this in my endurance athletic endeavors as well, right? It's just like I was never very talented, but I knew that if I just planned and trained harder than anybody else, then I would be ready, more ready. And then, you got to have that mental strength to be able to push through, and eventually they would give up. I would be able to, persevere. So yeah, when it comes to the military training, I mean, we are going out there every single day, and this is all over. I mean, the military in the UK. I mean, all over the world. It's you're on the ground, in the air, at sea, whatever you're doing. You're like planning, planning, training, training, training. No plan survives first contact with the enemy, or as Mike Tyson wisdom says, everybody has a plan until they're punched in the face. Right? But if you plan, you have the ability to have a sense of the menu of all the types of things that might happen, and you get pattern recognition
Mm.
for, okay, now I see this is what's happening here, and I've seen this 100 times before. And so it actually becomes more subconscious that you're making decisions because you have that pattern recognition from planning, 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 training, 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 so that you're not actually having to consciously make final corrections, screaming at the ground while you're getting shot at. You actually see the corrections that need to be made, and you're able to execute when it really, really matters. It's the same idea. They've studied like, baseball players, right? Hitting the baseball. Like if they're actually consciously trying to like, okay, here comes the pitch, and now I need to, like, it's too late. The pitch is already in the
Yeah.
catcher's glove. They just are training over and over and over again so that they have this pattern recognition that's actually subconscious. And then the best players, they just kind of see the pattern and they're able to kind of, just based on muscle memory and based on even unconscious decisions, just, swing the bat and connect with the ball, and there's the home run. But when they're actually overthinking it and they're trying to be more conscious in their frontal lobe, like, oh, that's when they actually cannot connect. So it's the same thing for any human performance. You can't just wing it when you're doing something that is extremely complex. And if you want to excel at it, you've got to have that discipline. And in the mundane, when nobody's paying attention, people want to go watch Top Gun movies, but nobody's paying attention at 4 in the morning when the alarm goes off, and we're going into the briefing room and we're chair flying all the contingencies and emergencies that we have to deal with. And we're sitting there literally in a chair, going through them, visualizing them over and over and over again so that we can be prepared when we actually go on the flight. That part is not sexy. You don't see any of that in the
Yeah.
movie, but that's what sets us up for success when the nation really needs us and when lives are at stake.
I love that. Like we come back to your point earlier about doing the mundane, do the
Yeah.
mundane, the mundane over and over and over again for those moments. So let's talk about one of those moments,
Yeah.
because you've had many moments flying aircraft, flying fighter jets that have been high pressure situations.
Yeah.
But there's one particular moment that I'm certainly aware of that was
Mm-hmm.
pretty standout. That was a high stakes situation where it was like decision critical.
Yeah.
What was that moment for everyone listening?
Yeah. So for context, I was the commander of my squadron. So I had an entire squadron of A-10s. We deployed them from Tucson, Arizona, all the way over to Afghanistan. And we were responsible for providing 24/7 air coverage for the troops on the ground. So my squadron always had 2 to 4 airplanes airborne, and we were doing, routine combat missions throughout the day and the night, supporting the troops on the ground. But we took off with the maps of everywhere in Afghanistan, literally on our dashboard, because if somebody was under fire, somebody was ambushed and they needed help, we would often get diverted to a higher priority mission in order to be able to go save their lives. And we're given a call sign, a radio frequency, and a grid coordinate, and said, told, go help these guys. They're under fire, they need help. Sometimes troops have already been killed or already injured, and they're just needing the air support in order to be able to get out alive. So this one particular time, we never fly solo on these missions. This is important for life. These are really important high stakes missions, but we always have a wingman on our wing who, while we're focusing on like what's going on the ground, trying to sort out where's the good guys, where's the bad guys, what's going on with the terrain, as the flight lead who's responsible for the plan and the tactics and like how we're going to deliver firepower and keep everybody safe, the wingman is looking out for you. All right. This is important for life. The wingman is checking six, checking for threats from the air, from the ground. The wingman, we have a kind of entrusted contract. The wingman, if they see someone's firing a missile at me, can get on the radio and tell me exactly what to do. Bulldog 1, break left, missile launch flares. And I mean, I don't then get on the radio and say, well, what do you mean by that?
Mm.
To my wingman, are you sure you meant break left or do you want me to break right? Like, the delegation and is really important that there's this trusted contracts. There's a lot of leadership lessons here about how build a trusted team and you delegate authorities and trust. And so, because we've got it in that moment, like you don't have time to question anything, right? Your life is just a stake. So, I just want to give that context. So, this particular day, my wingman was actually highly experienced pilot, but had never flown in combat before and never flown in Afghanistan. This is their first flight in Afghanistan, first flight in combat. So they're on my wing. I'm the flight lead. I'm the squadron commander. And as we're getting ready to launch, we get word of this Navy special operations team in the southern part of Afghanistan that was doing a routine intelligence reconnaissance mission, and they got ambushed. And so they're in this winding canyon and they come into this, they stumble upon these caves of insurgents with all these weapons caches. And now they're scattered, they're surrounded, they're low on water, low on ammo, and they're fighting for their lives. And they need the air support to help them get out of there. And so we diverted two A-10s to help them, but they were running low on gas. So as we were getting ready to, they just scrambled us, like, get in the jets, go, and go relieve these guys. So we fly down there, and as the other two ship was getting ready to leave, they literally were running out of fuel. So they could just get my eyes and just have my eyes look into this particular bend in the canyon with a particular tree. And he's like, that's where we're talking about. And they left. So now my situational awareness is pretty low. And you got the guy on the ground who's under fire. You put yourself in their shoes. How would you feel? Now you already had to build the situational awareness up of this one pilot. They're helping to provide cover, and then they had to leave, and now you have to do it all over again while you're still under fire, right? So he's highly trained to communicate clearly and effectively to ensure that I understand what's going on, and there's a lot of chaos that can happen and mistakes, and make sure that I'm not going to hurt him or the other friendlies that are on the ground, all kind of intertwined with the bad guys. So communication really matters here, and slower can be faster, even when it's an emergency, to ensure that you have the highest situational awareness. So as we're sorting out kind of where everybody is and what's happening, it was just a cluster of, I mean, on my map, like friendly, enemy, friendly, enemy, friendly. I was like, Jesus, these guys are so close and they're so intertwined. And your weapons effects, when you shoot that gun, you can hurt the friendlies. So it's, you want to have the most accurate delivery with the tightest weapon pattern, with the weapons that are going to keep Americans safe without making mistakes. And so I came in to do a rocket pass where some white smoke would come up, just to make sure, like, are you sure you want me to hit right there? Because that's really close to you. So as I shot the rocket out of my airplane and I pulled up from it, he says, come closer to me, which made me feel even more uncomfortable. It's the target's closer to me. So as I'm coming around, we've got amazing technology with heads-up display, a computer-generated weapon sight that aids us to they're not smart weapons. They're not guided weapons, right? So the bullets are only going to go where you shoot them, altitude, dive angle, airspeed, corrected for winds. So precision really matters. And my entire heads-up display failed on me. And there's 4 levels of degradation, and all 4 failed. And so, like, I'm back to like World War II technology, where it's just very archaic. And now I have to put my plane at the right distance and altitude and airspeed from the target, and then do a lot of calculations inside my cockpit, looking at airspeed, altitude, dive angle, with very little room for error as I'm screaming down final with the bad guys potentially shooting at me. And we used to debate, we're never going to have to use this mode in combat. Like, this is so degraded mode, like nobody will ever have to use it in combat. Technology is such a great thing, right? It can really help us. But when it fails, you've got to go back to the fundamentals. So I had to decide in that moment, as I was pulling off, what am I going to do? Like, do I tell my wingman to come in and I hope he was paying attention? But what if he hurts the good guys? It's his first combat mission. He's been looking out. He hasn't been studying and following me in. Do I tell another 2 ship that they need to come relieve us? Or do I deliver in this archaic way that I had been trained to do over and over and over and over and over again. But, this isn't the training range in Arizona. This is
Mm.
now, I could not just miss the target, but I could hurt American. I could kill Americans if I fuck this up, right? So I just had to decide inside me, just like, I know what to do. I'm the commander. I'm a flight lead. I've done this before. I'm delivering in standby Pipper. Like, I know how to do this. I just need to now hone in and focus on being as precise as possible to do everything the way I know how to do it, and just push the fear down. Like there was this fear that was creeping up, and we all know it. We all feel it. And you may never fly a fighter jet if you're listening to this. It's not the point. When you feel that fear creeping up, do I have what it takes? Am I enough? Can I do this? That fear often is telling you the very thing you need to do, often, not always. I mean, sometimes, fight or flight, you actually need to get away from danger. Don't say Martha McSally told me to, put myself in danger. But often the fear that's creeping up is the thing that you actually need to push down and say, not today. You get to just stay right here because I need to do what I need to do. And I am on the edge of my capabilities, which is the definition of expanding, right? Right. We're expanding, and you're going to feel fear right in the edge of capabilities. But I have it inside me to deliver and to perform and to excel and to step up in this moment, whatever it is, whatever conversation you need to have, whatever pitch you may be doing, whatever relationship discussion you may have to have, whatever health situation you're dealing with. It's usually that when that fear is creeping up, choosing to have the courage and choosing to do things afraid is something I really talk about. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's choosing to do things afraid in the midst of the fear. Our friend
Mm.
Dan Sullivan, entrepreneurial coach, says, courage is doing what you need to do with wet pants. Okay.
Mm.
So that day I had to do what I needed to do. I didn't pee in my pants, but I certainly could have, with a wet flight suit. So I had to just push the fear down, and I had to be like, not today. No, today I have to step up and do what I'm trained to do. So I had to, look at my knee board, look at all the different calculations, make sure I understood the distance, the altitude, the airspeed, the dive angle, set myself up in a good position, make good corrections as I was coming down final, said a little prayer. Please don't let me screw this up. I had to then go back into my pattern recognition, talk about a flow state, right? A focused flow state, making corrections. Because if you're fast, it's going to go long. If you're short, it's if you're shallow, sorry, if you're fast, it's going to go long. If you're slow, it's going to go short. If you're steep, it's going to go long. If you're shallow, it's going to go short. If you're high, it's going to go short. If you're low, it's going to go long. And you may be one combination of all those. So you have to make very quick assessments and quick corrections, and then open fire. So came down final. I didn't even tell my wingman I was employing this way. I just didn't have time. And as I pulled off from the target, I was just like waiting for what felt like an eternity for the ground controller, Jaguar 412, to Jaguar 14 to answer me. Like, did I hit him? Is he alive? Did I hit where I was supposed to? And it just felt like an eternity. But I heard his radio call, and he said, Shaq, you hit the target. Come in with number 2. We're keep covering us. And I was able to step up in that moment to excel and to protect these guys so that we could get them all out alive that night. Every single one of them got out alive and home to their families, to live to fight another day. So it's just an example, because maybe it sounds like, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me. It does apply to you, because when the stakes are really high and you feel this fear, that it's like our evolution has actually had this fear to protect us, because it's something that's high stakes. It's something that's different. It's something that's new. It's something that's going to expand your performance and your capabilities. There is a resistance of like, no, like giving to the fear. But if you actually choose to push the fear down, it's still there with you. Choose to do things afraid, you will then expand your capabilities. You will be able to do new, amazing things. You will be proud of how you are able to step up, and then you will feel it again, and you'll keep expanding. This is what life and growth is all about. Is if you're not feeling uncomfortable or fearful, then you're not actually growing. You're not
Mm.
actually doing important things. So that's a high stakes moment where I had to deal with that. But we all have to deal with that feeling, and you can use those same tools in order to push through, do things afraid, and expand and do amazing things in your life.
I love that. And I think you're so right. okay, not everybody's going to be in combat in a fighter jet. That's a given for most people. But everybody can relate to having that fear boil up and push it down and work through that, which I completely agree with. Martha, you have done some phenomenal things in your life. I mean, we haven't even touched on you being a senator and all those other things, and we're not going to have time for that today. What are you most proud of?
Well, I'm actually most proud of the person that I've become. In my journey of growth, I went from living through some difficult traumas, like I've shared, surviving them, using some tools in order to survive in the moment, that didn't necessarily bring me healing in the moment, but allowed me to continue to survive and thrive while I still had some things to unpack. Then having the courage to look at some difficult things I've been through in my life and the impact that they were having on me and take my journey of healing from them, which we're all still on. I mean, every time I think I've like, oh yeah, I'm free from all that, like the onion gets peeled back, and you're just like, oh,
Mm,
I got a little bit more
another
to work
layer.
on.
Yeah.
And doing some like extraordinary things, which I'm super proud of, but also realizing in my growth journey, which I feel like I'm exponentially growing, that my identity is not attached to being a fighter pilot or being a colonel or being a senator or being a triathlete. And I used to think it was, to be clear. Like I used to think like when I said I am a fighter pilot, I am a colonel, I am a senator. Like most of us, we usually answer what our roles are, what our accomplishments are. I'm an entrepreneur, right? Whatever big things you've done in your life or what number you've earned to provide for you and your family. Like those things are all important, but they're things that we're doing and the roles that we're in. They're not who we are.
Mm,
And so I'm most proud of who I am and who I'm becoming, and even just the recognition and being on a growth journey that my identity is not attached to any of that. The divine essence of who I am is a spirit that is having a physical existence in this impermanent vessel that's going to transcend this. And while I'm in this vessel, I've had some experiences where I'm growing, I'm learning, and I'm impacting other people. And that's the most important. That's why we're here, right? And this limited physical time will pass. And I mean, I believe that if I take my last breath today or 50 years from now, I want to be able to say, like, I was in a growth spurt. I was always growing. I was always learning. I was always willing to face my fears, to face my traumas, to face my negative patterns in my life, my negative feelings, and just keep living in my unapologetic truth of like who I am and gaining more freedom and more growth. And it's, sometimes a scary journey to be on, but I'm most proud that I'm choosing to be on that journey and the person that I've become. So, I mean, I can't remember who said the quote. If you're not embarrassed by who you were a year ago, you're not growing enough. I really kind of take that approach that I'm not the same person I was a year ago. I'm not the same person that I was a week ago before I went into the Grand Canyon.
mm.
And I'm just proud that I'm continuing to be on that growth journey and I can't wait to see what happens next.
I love that. I love that. And I've had similar experiences in the sense of that. I mean, certainly the thing where you look back a year ago and you go, "Oh my God, I'm embarrassed." I was talking about that on an episode literally just the other week, saying I look back and I look at this and what was I thinking? What was I doing? But that for me is an indication of growth,
Yes.
right? So that I'm cool
Yes.
with. But the other one that I love, I don't know if you got engaged with it, but a couple of years, it was in COVID, in those COVID times. Remember that small event, that little blip that happened?
That's
That's that
small, but
tiny thing.
yeah.
There was this thing called Clubhouse that came out. It was like a social media type app where you just did
Okay.
voice. And I went into one of these rooms, and one of the guys said, "I want everybody to introduce themselves based on their future, not on their past."
Oh, it's beautiful.
And because normally when any time you introduce yourself, you go, I am a fighter pilot. That's
Right.
because of qualifications you've done. I am an accountant. That's because of
Yeah.
qualifications you've done. Right. I am a business owner because of the business that you own,
Yeah.
rather than introducing yourself based on what you intend to achieve or do or have over the next 10 or 20
Yeah.
years. And I love that because you're quite big and you've just alluded to it there, which, if I've understood correctly, is one of your greatest things that you're most proud of, is no longer not defining yourself on the past.
Yes. Yes, not defining myself by the past and not defining myself by my roles, my titles, even in the present, right? Anything I'm achieving. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not doing things that are important and impactful. It's just that my identity is not attached to them. And if you look back, it's just, again, part of what we do as humans. We think that our future self is going to look a lot like our current self. But if you actually look back to your former self, if you're on a growth journey, you're like, I am not, I can't even imagine my life 10 years ago, I wouldn't imagine the life I'm living now, positive and
Mm.
negative, maybe like some of the challenges you've had to go through, but what you learn from it. And so you just need to trust if you're on a growth journey, you don't have any idea what your future self might look like. And it's really important to have a vision of your future for sure. But Will, I don't set goals anymore. I mean, I'm somebody
Oh
who
wow.
actually set like a lot of really hard goals. Like, I mean, I literally watched the Hawaii Ironman on television when I was a cadet, and I was like, I'm gonna cross the finish line of that one day. And I did. Like, I went through the mundane of going out running on Saturday morning while all my friends were sleeping in, eventually running, buying a bike, doing triathlons, running marathons, eventually kicking ass at the Hawaii Ironman triathlon. And so I've done a lot of hard things by setting goals, but my approach now, and this is what I would encourage everybody to do, because this is what I do now. This is where I am now, is I set identity-based visions, not goals. And I then set practices, habits, micro habits, routines into place that support the identity based visions. But I'm also extremely open to the divine surprising me, where you might have an idea where you're going, but you meet someone on an airplane or you listen to a podcast or you read a book, and all of a sudden you feel a divine inspiration that takes you in a different direction. You need to be open to not be so stuck on this goal you thought you were going to do that you miss this amazing divine opportunity that's come your way. So, like if I'm taking off in a plane here in Arizona, I generally need to know, am I going to New York or Los Angeles? Like I need to generally know a direction. So those identity-based visions really matter. Like where do you think you're going, right? Where do you want to go? What's a vision of where you're going? So set those, but be open to a diversion. Be open to like, okay, wait a minute, now I'm going to Texas because something shifted along the way. And being in that place of allowing is really important. I I mean, my word of the year is allow. I would say
Mm.
5 years ago, I mean, my when I had words of the year, they were very action oriented. I didn't always do this in my life, having a word of the year or words of the year. But in the past, they were very action oriented. They were very like matter on matter, dense goals, things I was going to achieve, things I was going to make happen. I'm now in a different place where like I I sit with myself and that higher self of like, what's the divine vision? What's the identity in different areas of my life? And then I identify routines and habits that would support it. James Clear is the author of the book Atomic Habits, and he talks about this where he says every day you cast votes for your identity by by doing these habits, right? So you do these habits, they cast vote for the identity. So instead of I want to run a marathon, it's no, I'm a runner. I am a runner. I am a healthy person. Well, what does a healthy person do? Well, they don't get drunk every night. Like they don't eat crappy food. Like they take care of their vessel. They hydrate themselves. So when other people are sleeping in, they're getting up and putting their shoes on and going for a run because that's what runners do. And so you're casting votes for that identity every day in the mundane and in those routines. So that's the approach I take now in areas of my life. I do it like physical health, relationship, professional, financial, and I butcher paper all over my house. So usually at the beginning of the year, I do a past year review. I really reflect on what worked, what didn't work, what were my peak positive and negative experiences. How do I raise the floor? I'm very intentional on that. But I've learned, for the future is allow, be open, set those identities, and then be ready for the divine. Like I've transformed this year so far in an area that I didn't even expect. But I said aloud to God, to the universe, whatever your listeners want to call the divine spirit that they can relate to. And when I said aloud and I truly meant it, then the transformation was available to me. But if I resist and you say close, then those things are just never going to be coming your way, or you just miss them. You don't see them.
No, I love that. I love that. Whilst we're talking about things you're proud of, you mentioned very early on in the episode your dad died when you were 12,
Yeah.
but then there was a letter, and there was a particular message in that letter. I'm right in saying.
No, I got to see him before he died. And
Right. Okay.
so what happened was he went to the hospital. He wasn't feeling well, and he was stable. He had a mild heart attack, which sounds like an oxymoron, but he was stable. It wasn't like dropping to the floor, call 911. He just like something didn't feel right. And so he was taken to the hospital and he was stable. And they were like, hey, you're going to need a recovery. This is, back in the 70s, right? You need a recovery and support, but he knew in his spirit that he was going to die. Like he just knew. And so he said, get my children now. I want to see my children. And it was a torrential rainstorm in the middle of the night. The nurses are like, sir, you're fine. You're stable. He's like, get my children now. I'm going to die. And so I got woken up in the middle of the night by my brothers, thrown in the car to go see him. I didn't really understand what was happening at all at the time. And we got to spend time with him. I mean, as a kid, I was like, he's in the hospital. He'll be fine, right? People in hospitals, they have doctors and they'll be fine. And we talked about a lot of mundane things in life. It's not like he was like, daughter, I'm leaving you now. Carry on my legacy. We talked about school and siblings and friends and the dog, and sports. But in that conversation, what he weaved in a very natural way that he wanted me to make him proud in that
Right.
conversation. And it didn't, again, at the time, it didn't feel heavy until a handful of hours later, he had another heart attack and passed. And so that became a driving force for me, make him proud, make him proud. And when I screwed things up, it's like, oh, then you're beating myself up. I'm trying to make my dead father proud. It drove me, drove me, drove me. And it served me until it didn't, right? Just like anything. I then in my own growth, I came to this place of like, well, of course I've made my dad proud, right? Like, of course I have. Look at what I've done. I've made him proud. In my own growth, it just was within the last year, Will, I was, participating in this retreat. We were doing some incredible breath work. I was just in this place, like, I just can't even explain it, like just spiritually, emotionally, energetically, of just being open to divine wisdom. And it dawned on me, I mean, the conclusion is not I made him proud. The conclusion is, and this is going to sound a little heavy, it doesn't matter if I made him proud. It actually doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm on my journey in life and that I'm growing and that I'm, walking out the journey that I was designed to be on, not attached to an opinion of another person, living or dead. And I
Right.
think this message is important for people who are listening to you because so many people I know, I'm sure, they're being driven to either prove somebody wrong or to make somebody proud. It's often guys, I hate to, guys that are trying to prove to their father, like, or to somebody else who told them you'll never measure up to be whatever those words were that were deeply impactful in a traumatic way. They're being driven in order to prove them wrong. And that can serve you. It serves me. It allowed me to have some guardrails to do really important things, but it wasn't my destiny. And like, I'm beyond that now. And at some point, you've got to kind of lay that down and be like, it doesn't matter what this person thinks. It doesn't matter, dead or alive. It doesn't matter what another human being thinks of you. You've got to march to the beat of your own drum. You've got to walk your journey. You got to unpack your own shit. You got to heal from your own trauma. You've got to be who you came here to be. And it doesn't matter. So that's my message,
I
because I think a
love that.
lot of people are driven positive and negatively by trying to prove to somebody else what they're
Yeah.
made of.
Yeah, only to them realize even if they do that, then they never even cared. It never even mattered. So one final
Right.
question
Yeah.
before we find out where people can connect with you, find out more, go and get the book, do all that good stuff. What's one thing that you wish more people asked you?
Oh, it's a great question. Ah, well, what are my divine I ams? I usually answer it even if it's not asked. And for me, even though words don't fully capture divine essence because they're just words, for me it's I am courageous, I am integrity, I am generous, I am growing, I am relentless. And they're actually on my wall back here. I'm anti-fragile, I'm funny, I'm adventurous, I am love, I am strong, I am feminine, I am passionate, I am determined. That more fully defines the essence of who I am. I just happen to be having all these other experiences, and I'm in these roles and out of these roles in my life, but that best captures who I am as the spirit that transcends this physical body, which won't be around forever.
I love that. And look, I can definitely say in my experiences of spending time with you and chatting with you, and even on this episode, you are absolutely those things. So, Martha, thank you so much for being on the show. For people that are thinking, which I know they will be, this woman's incredible. Where can I find out more? Where can I connect with her? How do people do that?
Yeah, they can connect on my website. It's marthamcsally.com. You can sign up for my doses of courage and humor and other things that I share on my website there. I'm at Martha McSally on all the social media platforms. And I've been, I'm keynote speaking. If you want me to come in and share with your group, I would love to do that and come serve you. And I'm super excited. I've been doing online coaching, and I'm going to have my first adventure retreat this coming August 8th through 11th. So you can find out more about that once it's available to be announced on my website. But I wanted to share it with you guys here first, where people can come with me, come out in nature. We're not going to be like suffering like survival school, but we're going to get into nature, connect with God, connect with yourself, the divine essence of who you really are, and connect with others in a beautiful way so that you leave this experience where you've conquered your fears. You're very clear of what's been holding you back. You're connected to your divine I ams, and you have a clear plan of how you're going to move forward to live the life that you desire and deserve. I'm super excited about this, and I can't wait to have this first experience.
And if people are contemplating that, so if you listen to this in 2024, absolutely go and do that. I had the privilege of spending a couple of hours hiking with Martha a month or two ago, and it was a great just being out in nature with her. So imagine spending days with her. It'll be transformational. So go and find out more about that. Connect on the website. Well, the other thing I'm going to add, I run an event over here, big multi-speaker event called the Personal Development Event of the Year, and we will be flying you over, albeit you probably won't be flying over in a fighter jet, to come and speak here in London. We'll get that arranged and get you speaking at our event.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I'd be honored to be a wingman for your event, Will. Seriously, thanks for inviting me for this conversation today. And I hope anyone who's listening, if you're struggling or if you're feeling a little bummed out or you have some regrets or you feel like life is passing you by, or maybe you've achieved your goals and you realize like it's just not like satisfying to you. Today is a brand new day. Never give up. You came to this earth for this experience, for you to connect with who you truly are and to grow and to learn. And today is a brand new day. So don't give up and have hope and connect with the divine essence of who you truly are.
Love that. And for everyone that's been listening, until next time, make it happen. Thank you for listening to Make It Happen with Will Polston. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share it with anybody that you think could benefit from it, and also make sure that you hit subscribe so that you get the new episodes as soon as they're released.